There exists a silent game being played all around you, every single day, in every conversation, every glance, every carefully chosen word. Most people walk through life blind to it, mistaking polite smiles for genuine warmth, confusing eloquent speech for honest intention, believing that what they see on the surface reflects what truly lies beneath. They trust too easily, reveal too much, and wonder why they so often find themselves outmaneuvered, outplayed, surprised by betrayals they never saw coming. But what if you could pierce through the carefully constructed masks that people wear? What if you possessed the ability to read the hidden motives behind pleasant words, to detect the calculation behind seemingly spontaneous gestures, to see the chess game while others believe they are merely having casual conversations? The great strategist Machiavelli understood something profound about human nature that separates the powerful from the powerless, that men are simple creatures, driven by predictable desires and fears, and those who learn to recognize these patterns hold an advantage so profound it borders on the supernatural. The world does not reward the naive, the trusting, or the transparent. It rewards those who see clearly while remaining unseen themselves, who understand the machinery of human motivation while keeping their own mechanisms hidden from view. Machiavelli observed the courts of Renaissance Italy, where a single misread conversation could mean exile or death, where alliances shifted like sand, and where survival itself demanded the ability to distinguish genuine loyalty from performance art. In that brutal laboratory of human interaction, he discovered principles that remain as relevant in modern boardrooms, relationships, and social encounters as they were 5 centuries ago in the palaces of Florence. The fundamental architecture of human nature has not changed. People still disguise their ambitions, still present calculated versions of themselves, still employ the same ancient strategies to gain advantage while appearing innocent of manipulation. The only question is whether you will remain among the deceived or join the ranks of those who perceive. Consider how much of your daily life consists of reading situations incorrectly. That colleague who offers enthusiastic support for your project while subtly undermining you in private conversations with management. That friend who celebrates your successes to your face while feeling secretly threatened by your progress. That romantic interest who mirrors your values perfectly because they have studied what you respond to, not because they genuinely share your convictions. The cost of these misreadings compounds over time, like interest on a debt you did not know you were accumulating. Opportunities vanish because you trusted the wrong advisor. Relationships crumble because you mistook performance for authenticity. Negotiations fail because you revealed your true position to someone skilled at concealing theirs. Meanwhile, those who have developed the ability to see through people move through the world with a different kind of confidence, making fewer mistakes, suffering fewer betrayals, and consistently finding themselves in advantageous positions that seem like luck to outside observers, but are actually the result of superior perception. Machiavelli wrote that the wise prince must learn to see not only what lies before his eyes, but what will develop from present circumstances. For while common men observe only present effects, the perceptive recognize the disease in its earliest symptoms before it becomes obvious to all. This principle applies equally to understanding people. By the time someone's true nature becomes obvious to everyone, considerable damage has often already been done. The superior strategist reads the early signs, the subtle inconsistencies between word and deed, the micro-expressions that leak through carefully maintained composure, the patterns of behavior that reveal underlying character. This is not cynicism or paranoia. It is simply clear sight in a world where most people are either deliberately obscuring their intentions or unconsciously projecting a more flattering version of themselves than reality warrants. The person who treats all claims at face value, who assumes good faith until proven otherwise, who believes that people are generally as they present themselves, is not more virtuous than the person who verifies. They are simply more vulnerable. What you are about to discover is not a collection of cheap manipulation tactics or cynical assumptions about human wickedness. Instead, you will learn how to observe human behavior through the lens that Machiavelli employed. A framework that sees people as they actually are, rather than as they claim to be, or as we might wish them to be. You will understand the fundamental drives that govern human action, the patterns that repeat across different contexts and personalities, and the specific signals that distinguish genuine character from carefully curated presentation. This knowledge will not make you cruel or misanthropic. It will make you discerning. It will prevent you from being surprised by betrayals that others saw coming. It will allow you to identify genuine allies while others mistake eloquent enemies for friends. It will give you the upper hand not through force or deceit, but through clarity of perception. And once you possess this clarity, once you learn to see through people while they remain blind to themselves, the game that surrounds you every day will finally become visible, and you will discover that you have been playing it all along. You simply did not know the rules until now. The foundation of seeing through people begins with a principle Machiavelli considered essential: understanding that human beings are fundamentally driven by self-interest, though they possess a remarkable capacity to disguise this truth even from themselves. When someone presents themselves to you, they are not showing you who they are, but rather the version of themselves they wish you to perceive, crafted to serve their immediate purposes. This is not necessarily malicious. Most people engage in this self-presentation unconsciously, genuinely believing that their carefully edited version represents their authentic self. The strategist's advantage lies in recognizing that this performance, however sincere it may feel to the performer, reveals far less than what people do when they believe no one of consequence is watching. Machiavelli advised that you should observe not what men say, but what they do, for actions emerge from necessity, while words serve convenience. The person who speaks constantly of loyalty but abandons allies the moment a better opportunity appears is telling you their truth through behavior, not through language. To pierce through the performance, you must first train yourself to notice the gap between stated values and actual choices. Listen carefully when someone describes themselves, notes the virtues they emphasize, the qualities they claim as central to their identity, then watch patiently to see whether their decisions, particularly under pressure or when they believe they are unobserved, actually reflect these professed principles. A person who constantly emphasizes their honesty is often signaling an awareness that others might doubt this quality. Someone who repeatedly stresses their loyalty may be compensating for an underlying unreliability that they themselves sense. Machiavelli understood that people generally present themselves as they wish to be perceived, which means they amplify qualities they lack and downplay characteristics they possess in abundance. The truly generous person rarely needs to announce their generosity. The genuinely confident individual does not constantly assert their confidence. It is the person insecure about a particular quality who most frequently advertises its presence. Consider how people respond when their interests are threatened versus when circumstances are favorable. Machiavelli noted that it is easy to find men who will stand beside you when fortune smiles, but true character reveals itself when conditions turn hostile. The colleague who praises your work enthusiastically when your star is rising, but grows distant when your project faces difficulties, is showing you something more honest than anything they ever said. The friend who celebrates your successes but becomes strangely unavailable when you face challenges is demonstrating their actual position in your life, regardless of the affectionate language they employ during good times. Adversity does not create character flaws. It merely illuminates what was always present beneath the veneer of fair weather pleasantness. Therefore, note carefully who remains steady when circumstances shift, for these rare individuals have revealed something authentic about themselves, while those who vanish have simply stopped performing. The second critical principle involves understanding that most people are not strategic in the way they believe themselves to be. They are instead reactive creatures who respond to immediate pressures and opportunities according to patterns established by their fundamental nature. Machiavelli observed that men change their actions, but rarely their nature, which means that past behavior represents the most reliable predictor of future conduct. When someone tells you they have changed, grown, learned from their mistakes, receive this claim with appropriate skepticism until time proves it accurate. Genuine transformation occurs, but it is rare and difficult, requiring sustained effort against the gravitational pull of ingrained habits. Far more commonly, what people call change is simply the same pattern expressed in a new context. The person who betrayed their previous partner while pursuing you possesses a nature that makes betrayal possible, and this nature will not vanish simply because they are now directing their attention toward you. The business associate who dealt dishonestly with others while treating you fairly has demonstrated a capacity for dishonesty that will eventually turn in your direction when circumstances make it advantageous. Understanding this allows you to read people's probable future behavior by studying their historical patterns. Look beyond the isolated incident they wish you to judge them by and instead examine the broader trajectory of their choices. Do they consistently follow through on commitments or regularly offer elaborate explanations for why circumstances prevented them from keeping their word? When they face ethical dilemmas, do they sacrifice their comfort to maintain their principles, or do they find sophisticated rationalizations for why this particular situation justifies an exception? Machiavelli would tell you that the person's answer to these questions under past pressure tells you far more than their promises about future behavior. The individual who has repeatedly demonstrated reliability under various conditions possesses a character that makes reliability likely going forward. The person whose history shows a pattern of abandoning commitments whenever maintaining them becomes inconvenient has revealed their fundamental nature, and your wishful thinking will not alter it. Pay particular attention to how people treat those who hold no power over them and can offer them no benefit. Machiavelli understood that courtesy shown to superiors or potential allies reveals nothing, for such behavior serves transparent self-interest. The true measure of character appears in how someone treats the waiter who serves them, the subordinate who can neither help nor harm them, the stranger who will never factor into their success. When a person is dismissive toward those they deem irrelevant, rude to service workers, or casually cruel to anyone who cannot affect their fortunes, they are showing you exactly who they are, beneath the charming persona they present to useful contacts. This is not a performance. This is the raw character emerging when the need for performance temporarily disappears. The strategist takes note, understanding that this same contempt will eventually be directed toward them once they cease being useful or become perceived as powerless. The person who is consistently gracious, regardless of whether they are addressing a chief executive or a janitor, possesses a character rooted in something deeper than calculation. They may still act from self-interest, all people do, but their self-interest incorporates values and principles that constrain pure opportunism. Machiavelli himself, despite his reputation as an advocate of ruthlessness, recognized the value of such individuals, for their behavior has a consistency that makes them predictable and therefore potentially reliable within defined boundaries. You do not need people to be saints. You simply need to understand what governs their behavior so you can anticipate it accurately. The person driven purely by immediate advantage is useful in situations where your interests align but becomes dangerous the moment circumstances shift. The individual constrained by genuine principles may sometimes act against their immediate interest in service of those principles, creating a different kind of predictability that the astute strategist learns to recognize and appropriately value. Observe also the stories people tell about themselves and the role they assign themselves in these narratives. Machiavelli noted that humans possess an extraordinary capacity for self-deception, genuinely believing flattering interpretations of their own motivations while attributing base motives to others engaged in identical behavior. When someone recounts conflicts or failures from their past, notice whether they consistently position themselves as the victim of others' unreasonableness, or whether they demonstrate capacity for genuine self-examination. The person who has a long list of unreasonable former friends, irrational ex-partners, and unjust former employers is not uniquely unlucky. They are the common factor in all these deteriorated relationships, and whatever pattern caused these repeated ruptures will eventually express itself in their dealings with you. The individual capable of acknowledging their own contribution to past failures, who speaks of previous conflicts with nuance rather than certainty about their own righteousness, reveals a self-awareness that makes them more predictable and potentially more trustworthy. For they have demonstrated the rare capacity to see themselves with some degree of accuracy. Machiavelli advised that the prince should always be a student of human nature, observing carefully the various types of character that exist and learning to identify each type quickly from their characteristic signals. This taxonomic approach to humanity may seem cold, but it is simply realistic. People do fall into recognizable patterns, and these patterns predict behavior with remarkable consistency. The first distinction worth making separates those who possess genuine autonomy of thought from those who are essentially reflections of their environment. Most people are far less independent in their thinking than they believe. Their opinions, values, and even their desires are largely absorbed from their social context, making them predictable if you understand which reference group currently dominates their thinking. These individuals shift with their circumstances, adopting the values of whatever group they wish to belong to at any given moment. They are not insincere, they genuinely feel these adopted values as their own, but the source is external rather than internal. The truly autonomous thinker, by contrast, maintains consistency across different social contexts because their principles arise from internal conviction rather than social mirroring. Such individuals are rare and can be identified by their willingness to hold positions that make them unpopular within their reference group, by their consistency in private and public settings, and by their resistance to obvious social pressure. Machiavelli himself exemplified this quality, maintaining his analytical approach to politics even when his observations violated the comfortable moral assumptions of his society. These autonomous individuals are both more dangerous and more potentially valuable than the conformists. More dangerous because they will not be swayed by social proof or authority, making them unpredictable if you misjudge their internal logic. More valuable because once you understand their actual principles, their behavior becomes highly predictable, for they will follow their convictions even against their immediate interests. The strategist learns to distinguish quickly between these two fundamental types and adjusts their approach accordingly, using social proof and tribal belonging to influence the conformist, while engaging directly with principles and logic when dealing with the genuinely autonomous. Within the category of self-interested actors, which includes most of humanity, Machiavelli recognized an important distinction between those who pursue long-term versus short-term advantage. The short-term opportunist is the more common variety, responding to immediate incentives without concern for reputation, relationships, or future consequences beyond the current transaction. Such people are easily identified by their pattern of burning bridges, leaving trails of damaged relationships behind them as they move from one exploited connection to the next. They appear charming and accommodating initially because they invest heavily in the seduction phase, but they inevitably disappoint once they have extracted whatever value they sought. The long-term strategist, by contrast, understands that reputation and relationships constitute capital that compounds over time. They may still act primarily from self-interest, but their self-interest incorporates future considerations, making them relatively reliable partners within contexts where ongoing relationship holds value for them. You can identify the short-term opportunist by observing how they speak about past associates. If they casually reveal confidences shared by previous partners, if they mock or demean people who trusted them once those relationships no longer serve their purposes, if they show no embarrassment about breaking commitments when a better option appears, they are showing you exactly how they will eventually treat you. Machiavelli would tell you that the person who betrays others to befriend you is not demonstrating special loyalty to you. They are demonstrating a character capable of betrayal, and when circumstances shift, you will find yourself playing the role currently occupied by their previous victims. The long-term strategist, even when a relationship ends, maintains certain boundaries around what they will reveal or how they will speak about former allies, not from sentiment, but from recognition that their reputation for reliability holds long-term value. This pattern of restraint, even when they might gain short-term advantage from indiscretion, signals a more sophisticated calculation and therefore a more reliable partner for ventures requiring sustained cooperation. Another critical distinction separates those who have genuinely faced adversity from those who have primarily experienced comfort and success. Machiavelli understood that hardship reveals and refines character in ways that prosperity cannot. The person who has navigated genuine difficulties, who has been tested by circumstances that threatened their survival or fundamental interests, has been forced to discover their actual capacities and limitations. They know what they are capable of under pressure because they have been pressured. They have faced choices where easy options were unavailable and have learned whether their principles survive contact with harsh necessity. Such individuals often carry a certain quality of realism in how they assess situations and people, for they have learned that the world does not automatically accommodate their preferences. This does not make them cynical, though it may appear so to those who have never been truly tested. It makes them accurate in their assessments, which is invaluable when you need genuine insight rather than comforting illusions. The person who has experienced primarily success and comfort by contrast often retains assumptions about how the world operates that reflect their limited experience rather than broader reality. They believe that good intentions yield good results because in their protected environment, this has generally proven true. They assume that others share their values and will respond reasonably to reasonable approaches because most people in their circle have demonstrated exactly this pattern. They are shocked by betrayal, cruelty, or opportunism because these behaviors fall outside their experiential framework. Machiavelli would advise caution in relying heavily on such individuals when stakes are high, not because they lack goodwill, but because they lack accurate models of reality under pressure. Their advice will reflect the relatively gentle world they have inhabited, making it inadequate for navigating harsher environments. When you need someone who can operate effectively in difficult circumstances, choose the person who has already survived similar difficulties rather than the one whose primary qualification is eloquence about how things should work. Pay attention to how people handle disagreement, for this reveals much about both their character and their understanding of reality. Machiavelli noted that effective rulers could accept unwelcome news and contradictory perspectives because they valued accurate information over comfortable illusions. The person who responds to disagreement with personal offense, who cannot distinguish between criticism of their ideas and attacks on their worth, who surrounds themselves exclusively with agreement, is signaling dangerous weakness. Such individuals are not merely fragile in their ego, they are building decision-making processes based on fiction rather than reality, for they have excluded any information that challenges their existing beliefs. When circumstances inevitably contradict their assumptions, they will be uniquely unprepared to adapt. Moreover, their need for constant validation makes them susceptible to manipulation by anyone willing to provide flattery, which means their judgment is effectively controlled by the last person who praised them convincingly. The individual capable of engaging with disagreement without personalizing it, who actively seeks perspectives that challenge their assumptions, who demonstrates genuine curiosity about why others see things differently, possesses both ego strength and strategic sophistication. They understand that accurate perception of reality serves their interest better than comfortable delusions, even when reality is unwelcome. Such people are rare and valuable, for they can actually adapt their strategies based on changing circumstances rather than rigidly adhering to plans that no longer match reality. Machiavelli himself exemplified this quality, analyzing political situations with remarkable objectivity even when the results contradicted his personal preferences or moral sentiments. When you identify someone with this capacity for genuine objectivity, you have found a potential advisor or ally of unusual value, for their counsel will reflect actual conditions rather than wishful thinking or flattery. Understanding that people act from self-interest does not complete your education in reading human nature. You must also learn to recognize what each particular person actually considers to be in their interest, for this varies more than you might expect. Machiavelli observed that some men are moved primarily by material gain, others by status and recognition, still others by security, power, belonging, or abstract principles. Each person carries a hierarchy of values that determines which interests they prioritize when forced to choose. The strategist who can accurately identify which motivations dominate a particular individual gains the ability to predict that person's behavior with remarkable accuracy. The colleague who prioritizes status above all else will betray alliances, compromise principles, and sacrifice material benefit if offered sufficient recognition. The individual driven primarily by security will cling to familiar arrangements long past the point where change would serve them, making them both predictable and potentially constraining if you need adaptive responses to evolving situations. To identify someone's core motivations, observe what they sacrifice and what they protect when forced to make trade-offs. Words mislead because people often claim values they wish they possessed, rather than those that actually govern their choices. The person who constantly emphasizes their commitment to principle while consistently choosing comfortable compromises is telling you that comfort matters more to them than principle, regardless of their rhetoric. The individual who speaks longingly of wealth while remaining in a secure but modest position is revealing that security dominates their actual hierarchy of values. Machiavelli would direct your attention away from stated aspirations toward actual choices under pressure, for these choices emerge from genuine priorities rather than self-flattering narratives. When someone tells you that family is their highest value, but consistently prioritizes work over family time, they are confused about their own motivations, and you should base your predictions on their behavior rather than their beliefs about their behavior. Recognition of these varying motivational structures allows you to understand apparent irrationality in human behavior. The person who turns down a lucrative opportunity that would require relocating away from family is not acting against their self-interest. They are simply operating from a different hierarchy of values than someone for whom material gain is paramount. The individual who exposes corruption despite personal cost is not acting against their interests if maintaining their principles or self-image holds higher value for them than security. Machiavelli understood that effective strategy requires accurate models of others' motivation rather than projecting your own values onto them. The error of assuming that everyone shares your priorities has destroyed more alliances and ruined more negotiations than almost any other strategic failure. The person who cannot imagine that others might genuinely prioritize differently inevitably misreads situations, offers incentives that fail to motivate, and finds themselves blindsided by choices that would have been perfectly predictable to someone who understood the other party's actual value hierarchy. Once you grasp someone's core motivations, you gain the ability to predict their choices and understand their vulnerabilities. Every motivation creates corresponding weaknesses. The person driven by status is susceptible to flattery and can be manipulated through threats to their reputation. The individual motivated primarily by security will sacrifice almost anything to avoid disruption, making them reliable in stable conditions, but potentially paralyzed when change is necessary. The principle-driven person can be predicted through their stated principles, but is less susceptible to incentives that require compromising those principles. Machiavelli advised that the wise leader understands these patterns and uses them appropriately, offering each person incentives aligned with their actual motivations rather than assuming universal responses to universal rewards. The same approach that successfully influences one personality type will fail completely with another, and the strategist's advantage lies in recognizing which approach each situation requires. Pay attention to the stories and metaphors people use naturally in conversation, for these often reveal their underlying conceptual framework more clearly than direct questioning. The person who habitually frames situations in terms of battles, competitions, and winners and losers is showing you a worldview organized around conflict and status hierarchy. The individual whose natural metaphors emphasize cooperation, growth, and mutual benefit occupies a different conceptual universe, one where different strategies succeed. These frameworks are not mere communication preferences. They shape perception and limit what each person can see in any given situation. The competition-oriented individual will have difficulty recognizing genuine opportunities for mutual gain because their framework does not easily accommodate this category. The cooperation-oriented person will be slower to recognize genuine conflicts of interest because their natural inclination is to search for harmony. Neither framework is universally superior, but understanding which lens someone uses allows you to predict what they will see in situations and what they will be blind to, giving you advantage in negotiations, partnerships, and conflicts. Machiavelli also noted that you should pay attention to how people respond to power, both when they possess it and when they do not. Some individuals become more generous and gracious when they gain power, finally secure enough to afford magnanimity. Others become petty tyrants the moment they hold authority over anyone, revealing that their previous courtesy was merely prudent behavior by the weak rather than genuine character. This transformation occurs too frequently to be surprising, yet many people remain shocked when a formerly pleasant colleague becomes difficult the moment they are promoted. The person capable of wielding power without becoming cruel or capricious possesses rare strength of character, for power removes external constraints and therefore reveals what internal constraints exist. Someone who is kind only when they must be is not kind at all. They are simply calculating. The individual who maintains decency even when they could safely indulge cruelty has demonstrated something genuine about their character. Similarly, observe how people respond when they lack power or face unfavorable circumstances. Some individuals maintain their dignity and principles regardless of their position, continuing to treat others well even when they gain nothing from doing so. Others become bitter, resentful, or servile, their behavior completely determined by their current power differential with anyone they interact with. Machiavelli understood that fortune's wheel turns, elevating the low and humbling the high with reliable regularity. The person who treats you well only when you hold power over them or can benefit them is revealing exactly how they will treat you if circumstances shift. The individual who maintains consistent character across varying positions in the power hierarchy has demonstrated something rare and valuable, an internal anchor that prevents them from simply reflecting whatever their current circumstances demand. Such people are not common, but when you identify them, you have found potential allies whose behavior will remain predictable even as external circumstances change dramatically. The ability to see through people requires understanding not only their motivations, but also their level of self-awareness. Machiavelli recognized that most people possess remarkably little genuine insight into their own nature, behavior patterns, and motivations. They operate from drives and habits they have never examined, telling themselves flattering stories about why they do what they do while remaining blind to the actual mechanics of their choices. This lack of self-awareness creates predictable patterns that the observant strategist can exploit. The person who does not understand their own jealousy will act from jealousy while believing they are acting from principle. The individual unconscious of their need for control will create elaborate rationalizations for why their domineering behavior is actually necessary for everyone's benefit. These self-deceptions are not lies in the conventional sense. They are genuine failures of self-perception that make the person's behavior more predictable to an outside observer than to themselves. You can assess someone's level of self-awareness by noting whether their explanation for their own behavior matches observable patterns. When someone says they value independence but consistently seeks constant validation, when they claim to hate drama but always find themselves at the center of conflicts, when they describe themselves as calm but regularly escalate minor disagreements into major confrontations, they are revealing the gap between their self-image and their actual character. This gap is not unusual. Indeed, it is the normal human condition. What varies is the size of the gap and whether the person demonstrates any capacity to recognize it when gently confronted with evidence. The individual who responds to such evidence with defensive anger is heavily invested in their false self-image and will continue operating from unconscious patterns while believing they are acting from conscious choice. The person capable of saying something like, "I do not always act consistently with my stated values, and this troubles me," has achieved a level of self-awareness that makes them both more trustworthy and more capable of genuine change. Machiavelli would advise paying particular attention to the patterns people repeat while claiming to desire different outcomes. The person who consistently chooses partners with similar problematic characteristics while insisting they want a different type of relationship is being controlled by unconscious patterns they do not recognize. The professional who moves from job to job, always encountering the same conflicts with authority figures while maintaining that they simply keep getting unlucky with bosses, has not recognized their role in creating these repeated situations. These patterns persist precisely because the person does not see them, and what you do not see, you cannot change. The strategist recognizes these patterns quickly and understands that trying to reason with someone about their blind spots rarely succeeds. Instead, you simply predict that the pattern will continue and plan accordingly, not wasting energy trying to change dynamics that the other person is not yet capable of perceiving. Another manifestation of self-awareness, or its absence, appears in how people handle feedback about their behavior. The individual with minimal self-awareness treats any negative feedback as an attack, unable to distinguish between criticism of specific actions and rejection of their entire worth. Their defensive reaction prevents them from learning from the feedback, ensuring they will repeat the same errors indefinitely. Machiavelli understood that such people are essentially trapped by their own egos, unable to adapt or improve because they cannot tolerate the discomfort of recognizing their own flaws. If you depend on such a person, understand that they will continue making the same category of mistakes repeatedly, for they lack the mechanism necessary to learn from experience. The self-aware individual, by contrast, can receive uncomfortable feedback without collapsing into defensiveness, examining whether the criticism contains useful information, even when it is delivered imperfectly or with hostile intent. This capacity for non-defensive self-examination is so rare that when you encounter it, you have likely found someone capable of genuine growth and adaptation. The relationship between self-awareness and manipulation is complex and worth understanding. The person with minimal self-awareness is easier to manipulate in some respects because they are blind to their own patterns and can be triggered predictably through their known sensitivities. However, they are also more dangerous partners because they are unreliable, not from intentional betrayal, but from inability to manage their own unconscious reactions. The highly self-aware individual is more difficult to manipulate through emotional triggers because they recognize their own emotional patterns and can pause before responding. However, they may still be influenced through appeals to their consciously held values and principles. Machiavelli would tell you that the ideal ally is someone with high self-awareness, but whose principles align sufficiently with your interests that you need not manipulate them at all. Such alignment allows for straightforward cooperation, which is always more stable than relationships requiring constant management of the other party's emotions or blind spots. Consider also how people narrate the role of luck and circumstance versus personal agency in their life stories. The individual who attributes all their successes to personal merit while explaining all failures as results of external circumstances beyond their control is demonstrating a self-serving bias that makes accurate self-assessment impossible. Machiavelli understood that fortune plays a substantial role in human affairs, but effective individuals take responsibility even for outcomes partially determined by external factors, because this maintains their sense of agency and capacity to influence future results. The person who cannot acknowledge when they benefited from luck or circumstance is trapped in a false narrative that prevents learning. Similarly, the individual who attributes every failure entirely to their own inadequacy while dismissing the role of genuinely unfavorable circumstances is engaging in a different kind of distortion, one that may seem more honest but is equally detached from reality. The strategically valuable individual maintains a more nuanced understanding, recognizing that most outcomes result from an interaction between personal choices and external circumstances. Such people can acknowledge when they made errors without collapsing into self-flagellation, and can appreciate when they benefited from favorable conditions without falling into arrogance. This balanced perspective both reflects genuine self-awareness and enables continuous improvement, for they can analyze situations accurately rather than distorting them to protect their ego. Machiavelli himself embodied this quality, analyzing his own political failures with the same dispassionate clarity he brought to others' mistakes, neither making excuses for himself nor engaging in excessive self-blame, but simply identifying where his strategies proved inadequate to the circumstances he faced. Observe how people respond to their own mistakes once they are undeniable. Some individuals immediately begin constructing elaborate justifications, finding ways to reframe the error so that it appears either inevitable given the circumstances, or not really an error at all, but rather a misunderstood success. This defensive repositioning prevents learning and ensures the person will repeat similar mistakes, for they have processed the experience in a way that confirms their existing self-image, rather than updating it based on new evidence. Others respond to mistakes with what might be called productive guilt, acknowledging the error, understanding its consequences, and identifying specific changes in future behavior that would prevent repetition. This response indicates self-awareness combined with pragmatic focus on improvement rather than self-protection. The person capable of this response is rare, but extraordinarily valuable as an ally or team member, for they actually get better over time rather than simply repeating their patterns while telling increasingly sophisticated stories about why the patterns are actually strengths. Machiavelli emphasized the importance of understanding how people respond to fear versus how they respond to love or loyalty. Some individuals perform reliably only when they fear consequences, requiring constant monitoring and enforcement to maintain acceptable behavior. Remove the threat, and their effort and integrity immediately decline. Others are motivated primarily by positive bonds, performing well because they value the relationship, respect the leader, or believe in the shared mission. Neither type is inherently superior. They simply require different management approaches. The error lies in misidentifying which category a person belongs to and therefore applying inappropriate incentives. The fear-motivated individual will not be moved by appeals to loyalty or shared purpose, for these hold little weight in their motivational structure. The loyalty-motivated person may actively resent heavy-handed control mechanisms, experiencing them as signals of distrust that undermine the positive bond that actually drives their performance. You can identify which motivational structure dominates for a particular person by observing their behavior when monitoring is relaxed. The individual who maintains standards and commitments even when consequences are unlikely is demonstrating motivation rooted in something other than fear. The person whose performance immediately declines when supervision loosens is revealing that fear of consequences rather than internal commitment was driving their previous behavior. Machiavelli would counsel that you should be realistic about which type you are dealing with and structure your relationship accordingly, not wasting effort trying to inspire loyalty in someone fundamentally motivated by self-interest and fear of consequences. Such people can be useful team members if properly supervised, but you would be foolish to depend on them in situations where monitoring is impossible or where you need self-directed performance. The distinction between those who possess genuine conviction versus those who adopt whatever beliefs serve their immediate social or material interests reveals another crucial fault line in human nature. Machiavelli observed that most people are remarkably flexible in their professed beliefs, adjusting them as needed to fit their circumstances. They are not consciously hypocritical. They simply lack the independent foundation that would anchor them to positions that become socially or materially costly. When the social winds shift, these individuals shift with them, often without recognizing they have changed positions at all. They are the people who enthusiastically support whatever their reference group currently believes, who adopt new political or moral positions as their circumstances change, who look back at their own previous beliefs with embarrassment rather than recognizing them as part of a developmental journey. Such individuals are useful to have as allies when the prevailing winds favor your interests, for they will enthusiastically support your position. However, they become liabilities the moment conditions shift, for they will abandon previous positions with the same ease with which they adopted them. The person anchored to genuine convictions presents a different profile entirely. Such individuals maintain positions even when doing so becomes socially costly, professionally disadvantageous, or personally uncomfortable. They may adapt their strategies or change their minds based on new evidence, but they do not simply float from one convenient position to another as circumstances dictate. Machiavelli himself, despite being tortured and exiled, maintained his analytical approach to politics and his fundamental convictions about effective governance. These conviction-driven individuals can be difficult allies because they will not simply follow wherever you lead. However, once you understand their actual principles, they become highly predictable and potentially invaluable, for they will hold positions even under pressure, providing stability when those motivated purely by convenience flee. The key lies in accurately assessing whether someone's claimed convictions will actually withstand testing, or whether they are merely current beliefs that will evaporate when maintaining them becomes costly. Examine how people treat promises and commitments, for this reveals both character and strategic sophistication. Machiavelli argued that the wise prince must know how to break his word when circumstances require it, but this observation has been widely misunderstood. He was not advocating casual disregard for commitments, but rather recognizing that rigid adherence to promises in a world where others break theirs strategically puts the honest person at severe disadvantage. However, there is a vast difference between the strategic flexibility Machiavelli described and the casual dishonesty of the person who makes commitments with no intention of honoring them. The individual who regularly fails to follow through, who offers elaborate justifications for why each particular commitment could not be kept, who treats their word as merely an opening negotiating position subject to revision when inconvenient, has demonstrated fundamental unreliability. No amount of charm or eloquence compensates for this flaw, for you can never build anything stable with someone whose commitments evaporate when maintaining them becomes difficult. The truly strategic individual, by contrast, is judicious about which commitments they make precisely because they understand the importance of keeping them. They do not promise what they cannot deliver, they avoid casual commitments that might later conflict with more important priorities, and they fulfill agreements even when doing so becomes more costly than anticipated. This pattern of careful promising and reliable fulfillment builds a reputation that becomes a strategic asset, for people learn they can depend on such individuals' word. Machiavelli would tell you that this reputation has tangible value, opening opportunities and creating alliances that are unavailable to the person known for unreliability. When you identify someone who demonstrates this pattern of treating their commitments seriously, you have found a potential partner for ventures requiring sustained cooperation and trust. When you encounter the opposite pattern, understand that any agreement you reach will likely require enforcement mechanisms, for the person's word alone carries no weight. Notice how people distribute credit and blame within groups or partnerships. The individual who consistently claims credit for shared successes while ensuring that failures are attributed to others is demonstrating both poor character and strategic short-sightedness. Such behavior may yield short-term gains in reputation, but it inevitably poisons relationships and ensures that capable people will avoid working with them once the pattern becomes apparent. Machiavelli understood that effective leaders must sometimes make difficult decisions about where to direct credit and how to handle blame, but these decisions should serve strategic purposes rather than merely protecting ego. The person who generously shares credit for successes while taking responsibility for failures when appropriate is often building a more substantial foundation for long-term influence. For people want to work with someone who will not throw them under the bus at the first sign of difficulty. This pattern connects to the broader question of whether someone thinks in zero-sum terms or can recognize genuinely positive-sum opportunities. The zero-sum thinker believes that any gain by others necessarily comes at their expense, making them fiercely competitive even in situations where cooperation would serve all parties better. The positive-sum thinker can recognize when expanding the overall value available serves their interests better than fighting over a fixed pie. Neither perspective is universally correct. Some situations genuinely are zero-sum competitions, while others offer opportunities for mutual gain. However, the person who can only see competition will miss chances for beneficial cooperation, while the person who naively assumes all situations allow for win-win outcomes will be exploited by more realistic competitors. The strategically sophisticated individual can distinguish which type of situation they face and adjust their approach accordingly, competing fiercely when necessary, but pursuing cooperative strategies when they offer superior returns. Machiavelli would direct your attention to how people handle information, particularly sensitive information. Some individuals cannot help but share secrets, not necessarily from malice, but from inability to resist the social currency that inside information provides. Others maintain confidences reliably, understanding that discretion serves their long-term interests, even when revealing information might bring short-term social gains. You can test this quality obliquely by sharing relatively low-stakes information with someone and noting whether it remains contained or spreads. The person who casually shares what you told them in confidence, even about minor matters, is showing you clearly that they will do the same with more sensitive information if given the opportunity. Machiavelli himself was known for discretion despite being privy to state secrets during his diplomatic career, understanding that reliability in this domain was essential to maintaining trust with powerful figures. Understanding how people form and maintain alliances reveals essential aspects of their character and strategic thinking. Machiavelli observed that some individuals treat alliances as sacred bonds that constrain their behavior even when maintaining them becomes inconvenient. Others view alliances as temporary conveniences to be abandoned the moment a better option appears. Neither approach is morally superior in the strategic sense. They simply reflect different time horizons and different calculations about the value of reputation versus immediate opportunity. However, you must correctly identify which type you are dealing with to avoid the fatal error of expecting sustained loyalty from someone whose entire behavioral history shows a pattern of serial defection. The person who has left behind a trail of abandoned allies, each time with elaborate justifications for why that particular situation required breaking the bond, is showing you exactly how they will eventually treat you, regardless of how convinced they currently seem about your unique importance to them. Pay attention to whether someone maintains positive relationships with former partners, colleagues, and allies, or whether they consistently speak poorly of everyone they have separated from. Machiavelli understood that some partings are genuinely adversarial and that criticizing former allies may be strategically necessary. However, the person who has literally nothing good to say about anyone they are no longer allied with is revealing something troubling about their character. Either they have extraordinarily poor judgment in selecting associates, consistently choosing people who turn out to be terrible, or they engage in systematic rewriting of history to justify their own decision to leave. In most cases, the latter explanation is more likely. The individual capable of acknowledging that someone they are no longer aligned with nevertheless possesses certain strengths, or that a relationship that ended badly still had valuable phases, demonstrates both fairness of mind and emotional security. The person who must retroactively paint all former associates as having always been worthless is protecting their ego rather than assessing reality accurately. The way people handle competition and rivalry provides another window into character and strategic sophistication. Some individuals become threatened by anyone they perceive as potentially superior to them in any domain, responding with hostility or attempts at sabotage. This reaction emerges from deep insecurity and severely limits the person's ability to build effective teams or maintain productive relationships with talented people. Machiavelli noted that the effective leader must be secure enough to surround himself with capable people, understanding that their strength enhances rather than threatens his position. The person who can only feel secure when surrounded by individuals less capable than themselves is confessing weakness, not demonstrating strength. When you encounter someone who consistently undermines talented colleagues, spreads doubt about the competence of anyone who might outshine them, or cannot tolerate sharing credit with capable partners, you are observing someone whose insecurity will eventually sabotage any collective effort they are part of. The secure individual, by contrast, actively seeks out talented partners and allies, recognizing that surrounding yourself with capability raises your own game and creates possibilities unavailable to those who insist on remaining the most impressive person in every room. This person can celebrate others' successes without feeling diminished, can acknowledge expertise superior to their own in particular domains without experiencing ego threat, and understands that genuine strength is demonstrated by what you can build with others, rather than by maintaining artificial superiority through suppressing everyone around you. Machiavelli himself sought out the most knowledgeable people on various topics during his diplomatic missions, recognizing that learning from others' expertise served his purposes better than pretending universal competence. Observe whether someone maintains relationships instrumentally, keeping people in their life only as long as those people serve current purposes, or whether they maintain connections based on shared history, affection, or principle even when the relationships no longer provide obvious utility. The purely instrumental person is easier to predict in some ways, for their behavior follows simple cost-benefit analysis. But they are also more dangerous as allies because you know you will be discarded the moment your usefulness ends. The person capable of non-instrumental relationship loyalty provides more stability, though they may also maintain ties with people you would prefer they distance themselves from. Machiavelli recognized that both types exist and that neither is necessarily superior in all contexts. The key lies in accurate identification, so you understand what maintains any particular relationship and can predict what will happen when circumstances change. Consider how people respond to others' success, particularly success by those close to them. The secure individual can genuinely celebrate when friends or colleagues achieve victories, experiencing their success as reason for happiness rather than as threatening competition. The insecure person experiences others' victories as personal losses, particularly when those others are people they compare themselves to. This reaction often hides beneath socially appropriate surface behavior. The insecure person offers congratulations while subtly undermining, celebrates publicly while privately hoping for failure, maintains friendly appearances while feeling gnawing resentment. Machiavelli understood that envy is one of the most destructive and pervasive emotions in human affairs, corroding relationships and motivating betrayals that appear mysterious to those who do not recognize the role of envy in human motivation. When you identify someone who genuinely cannot tolerate your success or consistently feels diminished by your victories, understand that this person will eventually act against your interests, perhaps while maintaining that they wish you well. The relationship between someone's stated moral principles and their actual behavior under pressure reveals perhaps the clearest distinction between those whose principles genuinely govern their choices and those for whom principles are merely convenient talking points. Machiavelli observed that everyone claims to value honesty, integrity, loyalty, and other virtues, but these claims mean little until tested by situations where acting virtuously comes at significant cost. The person who maintains ethical standards when doing so is easy or socially rewarded has demonstrated nothing meaningful about character. The individual who adheres to principles when doing so requires sacrifice, when lying would be profitable and undetectable, when betrayal would be rewarded and loyalty punished, has revealed something genuine about the internal constraints that govern their behavior. These constraints may not prevent all ethical violations, particularly when the stakes become extreme, but they create a baseline of behavior that makes the person more predictable and potentially more reliable than someone whose only constraint is fear of consequences. You test for this quality not through direct interrogation, which merely reveals what people wish to believe about themselves, but through observation of their choices in situations where ethical and expedient paths diverge. The colleague who protects a subordinate, who made an honest mistake despite pressure from above to find a scapegoat, is demonstrating something real. The business partner who honors an agreement that has become financially disadvantageous when they could find legal escape clauses is showing you their actual character. The friend who tells you an uncomfortable truth that you need to hear despite knowing it will create temporary distance is proving their loyalty more convincingly than 1,000 effusive declarations of friendship. Machiavelli would tell you that these revealed preferences, demonstrated through costly choices, matter infinitely more than any number of eloquent speeches about values and principles. The final and perhaps most important dimension of seeing through people involves understanding the difference between those who can adapt to changing circumstances and those who remain locked into patterns that served them in different contexts but have become obsolete. Machiavelli devoted considerable attention to this issue, recognizing that inflexibility destroys more princes than almost any other flaw. The person whose strategies worked brilliantly in one environment often attempts to apply those same approaches in radically different circumstances, failing to recognize that success emerges from fit between strategy and situation, rather than from any inherently superior approach. You can identify rigid thinkers by their tendency to respond to new challenges with familiar solutions, regardless of whether those solutions address the actual problem at hand. They have a hammer, and every problem looks like a nail because they cannot conceive of using different tools. The adaptable individual demonstrates a different quality, the ability to recognize when circumstances have changed sufficiently that old approaches no longer work. This requires both strategic sophistication and a certain detachment from ego investment in previous methods. Many people become so identified with approaches that brought them past success that they cannot abandon those methods even when they have become counterproductive. The ability to say, "What worked for me before does not fit this new situation, and I need to think differently," requires uncomfortable honesty about the limits of your previous success. Machiavelli understood that leaders must develop this flexibility, remaining capable of both bold action and patient waiting, both generosity and severity, both trust and suspicion, deploying each quality as circumstances demand, rather than rigidly adhering to a single approach they have elevated to the status of identity. Pay attention to whether someone demonstrates genuine learning from experience or merely collects experiences that confirm existing beliefs. The person who genuinely learns updates their models of reality when evidence contradicts predictions, becoming more accurate over time as they incorporate new information. The person who merely accumulates confirming evidence becomes more certain over time, but not necessarily more accurate, for they are selectively processing information to avoid uncomfortable updates to their worldview. Machiavelli exemplified the former quality, continuing to refine his understanding of political dynamics throughout his career, based on observation of new situations and reflection on which predictions proved accurate versus which required revision. This capacity for genuine learning is rare and extraordinarily valuable, for it means the person actually gets better at navigating their domain, rather than simply becoming more confident in approaches that may or may not work. Consider someone's relationship to their own past selves and past choices. The individual who must defend all previous decisions as correct, who cannot acknowledge that they were wrong about significant things in the past, is trapped by their need for consistency into repeating patterns that may no longer serve them. The person capable of saying, "I believed X 5 years ago, but I was mistaken, and here is what changed my mind," demonstrates both intellectual honesty and the flexibility necessary for growth. This does not mean someone should be casually inconstant, abandoning positions at the first challenge. However, rigid adherence to past positions, despite accumulating evidence against them, reflects ego protection rather than principled consistency. Machiavelli would distinguish between the flexibility of the opportunist, who changes positions purely for convenience, and the flexibility of the genuine thinker, who updates beliefs based on evidence while maintaining stable underlying principles. The way people handle uncertainty and ambiguity reveals another crucial dimension of their character and capability. Some individuals cannot tolerate ambiguity and therefore rush to premature conclusions, preferring the comfort of false certainty to the discomfort of acknowledging genuine uncertainty. Others can maintain multiple hypotheses simultaneously, remaining uncertain until evidence justifies conclusion. The first type appears more confident and decisive, which may seem advantageous, but their decisions are often based on inadequate information processed through premature closure. The second type may appear less decisive, but their eventual conclusions rest on firmer foundations. Machiavelli understood that effective strategy requires the wisdom to distinguish between situations demanding immediate decision despite uncertainty and situations where patience to gather more information serves better. The rigid personality cannot make these distinctions, instead applying the same decision tempo regardless of context. Observe whether someone takes responsibility for the predictable consequences of their choices or acts as if negative outcomes that follow naturally from their decisions somehow constitute unforeseeable bad luck. The person who makes a risky choice and then acts surprised and victimized when the foreseeable downside materializes is either being dishonest or lacks basic capacity for considering second-order consequences. Either quality makes them a liability in any situation requiring planning or coordination. Machiavelli emphasized repeatedly that effective leaders must think through the likely consequences of their choices, including unintended effects and others' responses to their actions. The person who consistently fails to anticipate foreseeable consequences may be intelligent in other domains, but lacks the particular type of intelligence necessary for strategic thinking. No amount of other virtues compensates for this deficit in contexts requiring navigation of complex situations where your choices affect others and their responses affect you. The distinction between those who learn from others' mistakes and those who insist on making every error personally divides humanity into categories with very different life trajectories. The strategically intelligent individual observes what happens to others who make certain choices and incorporates these observations into their own decision-making. They learn from history, from case studies, from watching their peers succeed and fail. This vicarious learning allows them to avoid countless errors and progress more rapidly than those who must touch every hot stove personally to learn it burns. The person who cannot learn vicariously, who must experience every lesson directly, will progress more slowly and suffer more preventable setbacks. Machiavelli's entire body of work represents an attempt to allow others to learn from historical examples rather than repeating the errors of past princes. Yet he recognized that many people lack the capacity or willingness to learn this way, preferring to trust their own judgment despite its inevitable gaps. Finally, understand that seeing through people is not a one-time assessment, but an ongoing process of observation and hypothesis revision. People do change, though less frequently and less dramatically than we often imagine. More commonly, what appears to be change is simply new facets of existing character being revealed as circumstances evolve. The colleague who seemed perfectly reasonable in low-stakes situations but becomes impossible when power increases has not changed. They have simply revealed characteristics that were always present but previously constrained by their lack of power. Machiavelli would advise continuous observation rather than assuming that your initial assessment, however carefully formed, captures someone's full nature. Watch particularly for how people respond when their circumstances change significantly, for these transitions often reveal aspects of character that stable periods keep hidden. The person who handles both success and failure with grace, who remains fundamentally themselves across varying conditions, has demonstrated consistency that makes them valuable. The person who transforms completely with each change in fortune is showing you that their presentation is entirely circumstantial rather than reflecting stable character. And such individuals require constant reassessment as conditions evolve. Everything you have learned about seeing through people ultimately serves a single purpose: to allow you to navigate the world with open eyes rather than comfortable illusions. The principles Machiavelli identified half a millennium ago in the ruthless political environment of Renaissance Italy remain as applicable in your daily interactions as they were in the courts, where a single miscalculation could mean death. Human nature has not evolved in 500 years. The same drives, the same patterns, the same self-deceptions that govern behavior then continue to govern behavior now, merely expressed through modern contexts and contemporary language. The person who understands these patterns sees a different world than the person who accepts everyone at their word. Not a darker world necessarily, but a clearer one, where predictable forces operate according to discoverable rules, rather than mysterious chaos where anything might happen without warning. This clarity of perception does not require cynicism or cruelty, though it may initially feel that way if you have spent your life assuming that people generally mean what they say and say what they mean. The disillusionment of recognizing how thoroughly most people deceive themselves, let alone how willing they are to deceive others when it serves their purposes, can be temporarily disorienting. However, what you gain in exchange for comfortable illusions is far more valuable: the ability to identify genuine allies among the many who merely claim that status, the power to predict behavior that mystifies those who rely on words rather than watching patterns, and the advantage of seeing moves several steps ahead while others react only to immediate circumstances. Machiavelli did not write to make people more paranoid, but to make them more effective. And effectiveness requires accurate perception of reality, regardless of whether that reality conforms to your preferences about how things should work. As you begin applying these principles, you will likely discover something uncomfortable. Many of your existing relationships and alliances rest on foundations less solid than you imagined. Some people you trusted will reveal themselves as fundamentally unreliable once you begin observing their actual patterns rather than accepting their self-presentation. Some allies you depend on will prove to be fair-weather friends who will vanish the moment your circumstances become less favorable. Some principles you thought people held dear will turn out to be rhetorical devices they employ when convenient, but abandon instantly when maintaining them becomes costly. This recognition is not cause for despair. It is simply information, and information allows you to make better decisions about where to invest your trust, your resources, and your vulnerability. Better to recognize unreliability before it causes catastrophic damage than to discover it after you have built critical dependencies on foundations of sand. Yet you will also likely discover something more encouraging, that genuine quality exists and becomes recognizable once you know what signals to observe. The person who maintains principles under pressure, who treats commitment seriously, who demonstrates consistency across varying contexts, who possesses genuine self-awareness and capacity for growth, becomes identifiable once you learn to distinguish these qualities from their common counterfeits. These individuals are rare, but they exist, and building your most important alliances with them creates entirely different possibilities than attempting to work with charming opportunists or self-deceived conformists. Machiavelli himself maintained deep friendships with a small number of people he respected throughout his life, demonstrating that his realistic assessment of human nature did not prevent him from valuing genuine quality when he encountered it. The difference lies in having accurate expectations and investing trust proportionally to demonstrated trustworthiness rather than distributing it indiscriminately. The upper hand you gain from seeing through people is not primarily about manipulation or exploitation, though understanding human nature certainly makes both possible if you choose that path. Rather, it is about operating from accurate information rather than comforting fiction, making decisions based on how people actually are rather than how you wish they were, and building structures that account for predictable human limitations rather than assuming everyone will consistently act from their highest principles. This realism does not make you cruel. It makes you effective. It allows you to create incentives that actually align with how people are motivated rather than how they claim to be motivated. It enables you to identify which relationships can bear weight and which are merely ornamental. It gives you the clarity to invest your limited time, energy, and trust where they will yield genuine returns rather than dispersing them indiscriminately among people who will disappoint you as predictably as gravity pulls objects downward. Remember that the game you are playing becomes visible only once you learn to see it. Until then, you are a piece being moved by forces you do not recognize, responding to pressures you do not understand, mystified by outcomes that follow perfectly predictable patterns to anyone who has learned to read them. But from this moment forward, armed with the principles Machiavelli identified and the observational framework you have learned to apply, you possess a different kind of sight. The masks people wear become transparent. The patterns they repeat become obvious. The motivations they disguise even from themselves become readable. And with this clarity comes power, not the loud power of force or the obvious power of position, but the subtle and ultimately more durable power of understanding while others remain confused, of seeing clearly while others stumble through fog, of playing the game with full knowledge of the rules while most people do not even realize they are playing. This is the upper hand that genuine perception provides, and once you possess it, you will never again be content with the comfortable blindness you left behind.